Before you cry poverty again, Mr. Mercer, understand this. The law does not need liars. Dean Victor Marlow said it into a microphone. Not across a desk. Not in a private office. In the main atrium of Lakefront College of Law in Chicago, under the glass ceiling, with alumni donors in the front row and half the first-year class filming from the stairs. Eli Mercer stood alone beside the honor board table, wearing the same dark suit he had worn to his mother's funeral. The sleeves were a little short. The cuffs had been pressed so many times the fabric shone at the edges. On the table in front of him sat a printed accusation, a laptop, and the one object Marlow kept tapping with 2 fingers like it was evidence of Eli's guilt. A cracked black fountain pen. Eli had carried it every day since August. It had belonged to his mother, who spent 26 years typing court records at the Cook County Courthouse and still believed the law could protect poor people if someone forced it to read its own words. Marlow lifted the pen for everyone to see. This was found beside the answer key, he said, in the locked faculty print room. The same morning, Mr. Mercer earned the highest score in civil procedure. A soft sound moved through the crowd, not shock, judgment. Eli heard someone whisper, "I knew it." Another voice, quieter but sharper, said, "Scholarship kid." At the end of the first row sat Denise Harper, the state bar liaison assigned to observe the school's ethics review. She had a leather notebook open on her lap, her pen frozen above the page. Beside her was Ruth Bell, the night janitor, still in her gray work shirt. Ruth had come because Eli had once helped her grandson fill out a housing appeal for free. She was not supposed to be there. Her badge had been clipped backward, like she had rushed in. Marlow smiled at the room, but never at Eli. "Lakefront has built its reputation on integrity," he said. "We will not let one desperate student turn hardship into a license to steal." Eli's jaw tightened. He did not answer. That was what made it worse for the cameras. Marlow wanted anger. He wanted Eli to shout, to shake, to look like the kind of boy a clean institution could remove and call it courage. Instead, Eli placed both hands flat on the edge of the table. His left thumb rested over a small paper cut. His right hand hovered near the cracked pen, but he did not take it back. Professor Graham, the faculty member seated beside Marlow, slid a document forward. His voice came out thin. "If you sign the withdrawal agreement today, the expulsion notation will not appear on your permanent academic record." Eli read the first line. "Voluntary resignation." Then the second. "Admission of academic misconduct." The atrium seemed to narrow around those words. A donor in a navy coat raised his phone higher. A classmate leaned over the railing for a better angle. Somewhere near the coffee cart, someone laughed once, then stopped when Eli raised his eyes. Marlow bent toward the microphone again. "You have 5 minutes," he said. "After that, the board votes, your scholarship is revoked, and the referral goes to the bar character committee. You may never practice law in this state." That was the line that changed the air. Even people who had already decided Eli was guilty understood the size of it. This was not a suspension. It was not a mistake that could be fixed after finals. It was a door being bricked shut in public. Ruth Bell pressed a hand against her mouth. Eli finally reached into the inside pocket of his suit. Marlow's smile thinned. "If that is another excuse," the dean said, "save it for someone who bills by the hour." Eli pulled out a folded envelope, soft at the corners, sealed with a strip of courthouse tape. The tape was old, beige, the kind clerks used when a file had been copied, certified, and handled too many times. Marlow noticed it. For one quick second, his fingers stopped moving. Eli set the envelope beside the withdrawal agreement. He did not open it. Not yet. He only said, "I'm not signing a lie." A few students murmured. Professor Graham shifted in his chair. Denise Harper wrote something down. Marlow recovered fast. "Then let the record show," he said, louder now, "that Elijah Mercer refuses accountability." Eli's face changed at the sound of his full name. Not much, just enough for Ruth to notice, just enough for Harper to stop writing again. Marlow raised his hand for the vote, and that was when Eli slid the sealed envelope across the table, slow enough for every phone camera to catch it. On the front, in blue courthouse ink, were 4 words that made Professor Graham's hand pull back before he touched it. Courtroom 2 miles away. They did not know why the dean who had mocked him suddenly stopped smiling, and they did not know that before the week was over, Lakefront's biggest donor would freeze a $7 million pledge, outside counsel would take over the honor board, and Victor Marlow's clean little story would begin to collapse line by line. But to understand why that transcript mattered, and why Eli had waited until the cruelest possible moment to reveal it, you have to go back 3 weeks. Back before the cameras, back before the accusation, back to the night Eli Mercer missed dinner, missed sleep, and walked into a courthouse carrying his mother's cracked pen. 3 weeks earlier, Eli Mercer woke at 4:42 a.m. in a basement apartment in Pilsen because the radiator pipes above his bed knocked like someone trying to get in. He did not own an alarm clock. His phone was too old to trust, and the screen had a crack running through the hour. So he slept lightly, the way people sleep when missing one shift could mean missing rent. By 5:15, he was on the Orange Line with a backpack between his knees, reading civil procedure from a used casebook with 3 different students' notes in the margins. The city outside the train was still blue and half asleep. Eli underlined rules about jurisdiction, while a construction worker beside him snored against the window. In the front pocket of his shirt was his mother's cracked black fountain pen. It was not expensive. The cap no longer clicked right, and a thin silver line split the barrel near the grip. But Lenora Mercer had used it to mark corrections on court transcripts for nearly half Eli's life. When she died, the hospital gave Eli her purse in a clear plastic bag. Inside were 2 bus cards, a peppermint, and that pen wrapped in a folded courthouse receipt. He kept it because it was the last object that still felt warm with her habits. Eli's first job started before sunrise at a downtown copy shop that served lawyers who wanted everything yesterday. He ran binders, scanned exhibits, sorted deposition packets, and learned quickly that men in good shoes could be careless with documents they expected poorer people to handle perfectly. By 8:30, he changed in the bathroom, smoothed his cheap suit jacket, and walked 6 blocks to Lakefront College of Law. The school sat near Michigan Avenue, in a polished building with limestone columns and donor names carved into glass. Eli always entered through the side door by the loading bay. It was faster from the copy shop, and nobody at the front desk asked whether he belonged. His scholarship covered tuition, but not life. Rent was on him. Food was on him. The last of his mother's medical bills sat in a folder under his microwave, each envelope arranged by due date. If Eli lost 1 semester, the scholarship vanished. If the scholarship vanished, law school became a story he used to tell people, not a place he could return to. Still, he never spoke about it unless someone forced him. At school, he was known as quiet, prepared, and hard to read. He sat in the second row, never the front, never the back. He answered only when called on. His notes were clean enough that 2 classmates had offered to pay him for outlines, and he had refused because it felt too close to selling the one thing he still controlled. On Tuesday nights, after class, he stopped at the courthouse. Room 1402 had been his mother's kingdom. Narrow desks, old printers, calendars with judges' names, and clerks who could find a missing file faster than most attorneys could find the statute. Eli was not staff, but the older workers remembered Lenora. Ruth Bell, who cleaned both the courthouse annex and Lakefront's academic building at night, remembered her best. "Your mama could type angry men into silence," Ruth told him once, wiping down a vending machine while Eli waited for a certified copy. Didn't matter who yelled. She just made the record accurate. That sentence stayed with him. The record accurate. Eli had grown up hearing court language over dinner. Not theory, not movie speeches, real words, objections, continuances, corrections, certified transcript, errata sheet. He knew the difference between what people said in a room and what survived on paper after a sworn reporter captured it. That was his hidden advantage. He did not come from power, but he had been raised near the machinery of truth. The danger returned on a rainy Thursday when Professor Graham handed back the civil procedure midterm. Eli had earned a 96, the highest grade in the section. A few students clapped because Graham encouraged it, but the sound came out uneven. Eli felt a tension settle on his shoulders. He slid the exam into his folder and kept his face neutral. Across the aisle, Preston Vale stared at the score like it had personally insulted him. Preston was the son of a Lakefront trustee and the kind of student who spoke in class as if every sentence were being saved for a campaign ad. He wore his family name easily. He also had a habit of borrowing Eli's outlines and calling it collaboration. After class, Preston caught him near the stairs. "Nice jump," he said. Eli kept walking. It was one exam. "Sure." Preston's smile held. "Just funny. You work mornings, nights, whatever else. Then you smoke everyone who actually has time to study." Eli stopped at the landing. There were easier answers. He could have said he studied on trains. He could have said poverty did not make a person stupid. He could have said his mother had taught him to read legal language before most kids could spell defendant. Instead, he said, "Ask better questions." Preston's smile disappeared. That afternoon, Eli received an email from the financial aid office. His scholarship renewal required a clean academic conduct certification before the donor event at the end of the month. All top scholarship students would be recognized there in front of trustees, alumni, and the state bar liaison. Deadline? 14 days. Eli read the email twice in the library. Then he saw another message below it. Dean Marlow requested a meeting. No explanation. Only a time. Ruth was mopping near the library entrance when Eli came out. She noticed his face and leaned on the handle. "Bad news?" "Maybe nothing," Eli said. Ruth had worked too many buildings to believe in maybe nothing. Her eyes dropped to the pen clipped in his pocket. "You still carrying Lenora's old soldier?" Eli touched the cap with 2 fingers. "Always. Then remember what she used to say," Ruth said. "Paper waits. People don't." He almost smiled at that. But when he reached the dean's suite, the assistant did not ask him to sit. Professor Graham was already inside. Preston Vale stood by the window, arms crossed, wearing the calm expression of someone who had arrived before the accused. Dean Victor Marlow sat behind a spotless desk, a silver lakefront seal mounted on the wall behind him. "Mr. Mercer," Marlow said, folding his hands, "we have a serious problem." Eli's backpack strap tightened in his fist. On the desk lay a photocopy of the answer key from Graham's exam, stamped confidential. Beside it was a grainy still image from a hallway camera. His face was blurred by motion, but the jacket looked like Eli's. Marlow watched him carefully. "Before you answer," the dean said, "understand that your entire future may depend on whether you are honest in this room." Eli felt the pen against his chest. For a second, all he could hear was his mother's voice from years earlier, tired after a double shift, telling him that a transcript was not magic. It only helped if someone asked for it before the powerful got done telling the story. So Eli did not panic. He did not confess. He only asked one question. Was there a court reporter present? Dean Marlow did not like the question. His smile held for 1 second too long, then flattened. "A court reporter?" he said. "This is an academic integrity meeting, Mr. Mercer, not a criminal trial." "I understand. Then answer the allegation." Eli kept his hands on his knees. "I did not enter the faculty print room. I did not see that answer key before the exam. I did not cheat." Preston made a small sound near the window. Professor Graham kept his eyes on the photocopy. He was a careful man in class, the kind who corrected grammar in hypotheticals, but here he seemed smaller. His fingers worried the corner of his legal pad. Marlow leaned back in his chair. Lakefront College of Law was his whole life's argument. He had arrived 7 years earlier, promising to turn a respected regional school into a national name. He gave interviews about ethics. He hosted panels on access to justice. He posed beside scholarship students in the annual report, one hand on their shoulders as if he had personally pulled them from hardship. To donors, he was polished compassion. To students with no family money, he was a locked door in a nice suit. His private fear was not scandal. It was ridicule. He had built Lakefront's image on the claim that its honor system was cleaner than the courts, cleaner than politics, cleaner than the city outside its glass walls. If a top scholarship student had cheated, it damaged the brand. If a trustee's son was involved, it damaged something worse. It damaged control. Marlow slid the hallway image toward Eli. This is you. It's someone in a dark jacket. It is your build, your height, your usual arrival time, and your clothing. I was at work at 5:56. Preston uncrossed his arms. Convenient. Eli did not answer him. Marlow's eyes moved to the pen in Eli's shirt pocket, and this was found in the print room after the answer key was copied. Eli's pulse hit once, hard. My pen? Your pen. That was in my backpack. Then perhaps your backpack took a walk. Preston laughed through his nose. Professor Graham finally spoke. Eli, if there is some explanation, now is the time. There it was. Not Mr. Mercer. Eli. The soft voice people used when they wanted you to make their discomfort easier. I want to see the evidence, Eli said. Marlow's expression sharpened. You are seeing it. I want the original camera file, the access log for the print room, and the chain of custody for my pen. The room cooled. Preston's confidence slipped just enough to show annoyance underneath. Graham's pen stopped moving. Marlow folded the photocopy back into his folder. You are in no position to conduct discovery, the dean said. I'm asking because the Student Conduct Code gives me the right to review material evidence before a hearing. Marlow's jaw worked once. Eli knew the rule because he had read the code when his scholarship letter arrived. Poor students read contracts. They read renewal terms. They read the parts other people click through because nobody is coming to rescue them from fine print. The dean reached into a drawer and removed a thin packet. Then, here is the rule you should focus on, he said. He opened to the conduct section and tapped a paragraph. Possession of unauthorized examination material creates a rebuttable presumption of academic misconduct. Marlow read it aloud, slowly, as if Eli might not understand. A rebuttable presumption, Eli said, still has to be rebuttable by credible evidence. I have my time card from the copy shop. Preston spoke before Marlow could. Time cards can be entered by a manager. Eli finally gave him his full attention. You know a lot about my job. Preston's face closed. It was the first small crack. Marlow noticed it too and moved fast. This meeting is over, he said. You will receive notice of a formal honor board review. Until then, you are barred from faculty areas, scholarship activities, and access to student employment records. My employment records? Administrative hold, Marlow said. Standard procedure. It was not standard. Eli knew it, Graham knew it, and even Preston seemed surprised, but the dean had weaponized the one rule most students feared. Pending conduct charges could freeze everything tied to institutional trust. For Eli, that meant more than embarrassment. His campus library job was paused by mourning. His scholarship certification was marked unresolved. His name was removed from the donor event program until further notice. He could still attend class, but everybody knew. By Friday afternoon, the rumor had done what formal punishment had not yet done. It had made him visible. A girl in evidence stopped talking when he reached the study table. Someone had written "ask him" for the answer key on a library whiteboard, then erased it badly enough that the words remained in gray dust. In the elevator, 2 second years lowered their voices and stared at his backpack. Ruth Bell found him late that night in the empty atrium. sitting on the floor beside a vending machine because the library had closed and he had nowhere else quiet to go. "You eating?" she asked. "I had coffee. That's not eating." He tried to smile, but it failed. Ruth handed him a paper bag from her tote. Turkey sandwich, orange. Napkin folded around 2 cookies. "You don't have to do that," he said. "I know." She sat on the floor beside him with a soft groan in her knees. For a while, they listened to the building breathe. Elevators clicked, pipes hummed, rain tapped the glass roof. Then Ruth nodded toward his pocket. "Dean's office still got your mama's pen?" Eli touched the empty place where it should have been. "They're calling it evidence." Ruth's mouth tightened. "She used that pen on transcripts from Judge Alvarez's courtroom," she said. "I remember because she'd come through the annex after late calendar calls, ink on her fingers fussing about attorneys who talked over each other." Eli held still. "Judge Alvarez?" "Mm-hmm. Old courtroom, 14th floor. Your mama knew every clerk up there." The memory landed strangely, like a key dropped in a dark room. Earlier that week, Eli had walked past room 1402 and seen a temporary notice taped to the door. Old civil files being digitized. Transcript requests delayed. Contact clerk for certified archives. He had not cared then. Now he remembered Marlow's face when Eli asked about a court reporter. He remembered Preston saying time cards could be entered by a manager. He remembered his pen, supposedly found in a locked room, after being taken from a backpack he never let out of reach. "Ruth," he said carefully, "do cleaning staff enter the faculty print room?" "After midnight, yes. Not students. Are there cameras inside?" "No. Hallway only. Who has keys?" Ruth's eyes narrowed. "Faculty. Security. Dean's suite. Sometimes trustees get temporary access during events. Preston's father was a trustee. That did not prove anything. It only made the shape of the lie clearer. Eli could not walk away because walking away meant signing himself into a future where every bar application, every job interview, every courtroom door began with one question: why did you cheat? It meant letting his mother's name sit under the weight of it too. Lenora Mercer, court reporter's clerk, woman who believed in exact words, whose son supposedly stole an exam and hid behind hardship. The honor board notice arrived Monday morning. The review would be held during the donor event. Public session, ethics showcase, state bar liaison present. Marlow had chosen the stage before Eli had chosen the fight. Eli read the email twice. Then he packed his books, left campus, and walked through rain toward the courthouse annex. At the archive window, an older clerk recognized him after a long squint. "Yes, ma'am." Her face softened, then grew careful when she saw the tension in his. "What do you need?" Eli placed both palms on the counter. "A certified transcript," he said. "From Judge Alvarez's courtroom. Anything involving Dean Victor Marlow, Lakefront College of Law, or Preston Vale's family." The clerk studied him. "That's not a small search." "I know. Could take days." Eli nodded toward the stamped deadline on his honor board notice. "I have 9. The first dismissal came quietly. Not from Marlow. Not from Preston. From the system Eli had trusted to at least pretend fairness. At the archive window, the clerk typed for 20 minutes, searching old docket entries tied to Lakefront, Marlow, Vale, and the Civil Division. Eli watched her screen reflected faintly in the glass, catching only pieces. Contract dispute, protective order, sealed exhibit. Then she shook her head. "If there's a transcript that matters, it is not indexed cleanly," she said. "Older files get messy when names come in through entities. Foundations, holding companies, committees." Eli felt the 9 days shrink. "Can I search manually?" Not without a case number, he thanked her, and walked out into the courthouse hallway, where lawyers hurried past carrying boxes and coffee, each person seeming to belong to a world with more permission than he had. For 2 days, Eli lived in fragments. He worked mornings at the copy shop until his manager, Ms. Navarro, pulled him aside with a printed notice from Lakefront. I got an employment verification hold, she said. It says there's an academic conduct matter. His stomach dropped. I didn't do what they're saying. Ms. Navarro studied him over her reading glasses. She was not warm, but she was fair, and in Eli's life that counted as mercy. I'm not firing you, she said, but the law firms who send student work here ask about background. Until this clears, I can't put you on legal accounts. Legal accounts paid the extra evening rate. Without them, rent became arithmetic with no answer. At school, Professor Graham stopped calling on him. Students who had once asked for help now protected their laptops when he sat nearby. Preston began arriving early to class and leaving with a cluster around him, speaking just loud enough. Honor Board will handle it. Some people think struggle excuses everything. Dean Marlow is protecting the school. Eli wrote it all down. Not because gossip was evidence, but because his mother had taught him that pressure had a pattern. When powerful people lied, they often needed other people to repeat the lie until it sounded like weather. On the sixth night before the donor event, Ruth found him in the basement corridor outside the maintenance office, staring at a printed floor plan of Lakefront. You planning to rob the place? She asked. I'm trying to understand how my pen got into that room. Ruth balanced a trash bag against her hip. Faculty print room has 2 doors, hallway door and service door. Eli glanced up. Service door? Goes through storage. Nobody uses it unless they know buildings. Is it on camera? Hallway side is. Service side, no. The partial clue hit him wrong at first. If a service door existed, the blurry hallway image could be theater. Someone could have placed the pen without appearing where Marlow said Eli appeared. But that also meant Ruth might be pulled into it. She had access. She had defended him. She cleaned those rooms. You can't mention that to anyone, Eli said. Ruth's eyebrows rose. I mean, not yet. If Marlow thinks you know, he'll make this about you. I've been cleaning rich men's fingerprints for 30 years, she said. I know when they start aiming. The next morning, they aimed. Ruth's supervisor reassigned her from Lakefront to a hospital route across town, effective immediately. No explanation beyond staffing needs. She showed Eli the text message behind the courthouse annex, her face stiff with anger she would not spend in public. They know I talked to you, she said. I'm sorry. Don't waste sorry. Use it. That was the moment Eli stopped hoping the truth would simply appear. He went back to the courthouse after class and asked for the oldest clerk on the civil floor. The woman at the desk sent him to a records room where metal shelves ran wall to wall and the air smelled like paper dust. Marion Cho, deputy records supervisor, met him with a cardigan over one arm and suspicion in her eyes. You're Lenora Mercer's son? Yes. She corrected my first transcript request in red ink and made me cry in a bathroom. Eli froze. Then Marion smiled a little. She was right, unfortunately. The smile vanished when Eli explained what he needed. I can't open sealed material, Marion said. I'm not asking you to. And I can't search private names all afternoon because a law school dean is scaring you. I know. So what can you give me? Eli thought of the rule Marlow had read aloud. Rebuttable presumption. Credible evidence. He thought of Preston's father, a trustee with access. He thought of donor money and a scholarship certification due before the event. A date range, he said. 7 years ago, when Marlow became dean. Anything in public civil records involving Lakefront's Scholarship Foundation and a donor pledge. Marion's gaze sharpened. Why that? Because he's acting like one accusation against me threatens more than one exam. That was the first time he said the theory out loud. Marlow did not only need Eli guilty, he needed Eli discredited before the donor event, before the bar liaison heard his name, before any old record could walk into the light attached to a scholarship student his office had praised. Marion ran the search. This time, one docket number surfaced. Vale Family Education Trust versus Lakefront Access Fund. Settled 7 years ago. Public hearing transcript requested and certified. Courtroom, Alvarez. Eli's throat went dry. "Can I order it?" "You can," Marion said. "But certified archives take 3 to 5 business days. I have 5. Then pay the rush fee." The fee was $86. Eli had $41 until Friday. He walked to the lobby, sat on a bench beneath a mural of Chicago's old courthouse, and stared at the payment screen until the numbers blurred. Selling his casebooks would not cover it fast enough. Missing rent would risk eviction. Asking classmates was impossible. Asking Ruth, after she had already been punished for helping him, felt like pressing on a bruise. Then he opened his backpack and removed his mother's folded courthouse receipt, the one that had been wrapped around the pen when the hospital returned her purse. He had never unfolded it fully. It felt too private, too final. Inside was not a receipt for office supplies, as he had always assumed. It was a stamped transcript request from 7 years earlier. Same courtroom, same judge, same case name. Paid by Lenora Mercer. Eli sat very still. His mother had ordered the transcript before she died. Not for work, not as a clerk, for herself. At the bottom, in her handwriting, was one line. "If they ever come for the scholarship kids, start here." The deepest part of Eli wanted to fold it again and pretend he had not seen it. Because if Lenora had known something and had carried it alone, then this was no longer just about his future. It was about the burden she had taken to her grave. He brought the receipt back to Marion. Her face changed as she read the note. "I can waive the search," she said quietly. "Already paid. Certification copy only." "How much?" $22. Eli paid with his debit card and left himself $19. That night, Marlow sent the final notice. The honor board review would take place in the atrium during the donor event, not in a private room. Attendance open to students, faculty, invited alumni, and state bar observers. Reason: institutional transparency. Eli read the phrase until it became almost funny. Then he took one quiet, active step. He wrote a certified request for all evidence Lakefront intended to use: the original camera file, access records for the faculty print room, chain of custody for the pen, and the identity of the person who found it. He sent it to Marlow, Professor Graham, and Denise Harper. He copied his own personal email. "Within 20 minutes, Marlow replied. "Request denied as untimely." Eli printed the reply at the copy shop and placed it in a folder, not as the supporting proof, not as the thing that would save him, as a map of who was afraid. 2 days before the event, Marion called. "Your transcript is ready." Eli reached the courthouse at closing. Marion handed him a sealed envelope with beige tape across the flap. "I will." "No," she said, holding the envelope back for one extra second. "Read every line. Your mother would have." Eli took it home on the train, held it under his jacket against the rain, and sat at his kitchen table until after midnight. When he finished, the apartment was silent except for the radiator. The transcript did not prove what he expected. It was worse. It showed exactly why Marlow needed a poor scholarship student to look like a thief before the donor event began. And it gave Eli one chance to stop him, not by begging, not by shouting, by letting Marlow lie in public first. By the morning of the donor event, Lakefront had polished the atrium until it looked less like a school than a showroom. White flowers lined the registration table. A banner hung from the second-floor railing with the words "Ethics in Action" printed in blue. Alumni badges flashed under the lights. Students moved in small, nervous groups, pretending not to stare at Eli when he entered through the side door. He wore the funeral suit. Not for pity. It was the only suit he owned. The sealed transcript rested inside his jacket, flat against his ribs. His mother's folded request receipt sat behind it. He had read both so many times that he could see certain lines when he closed his eyes. Ruth was not supposed to be there anymore. But she stood near the back wall in her gray work shirt. No mop, no cart, only her badge clipped backward again and her hands locked in front of her. Eli saw her and gave the smallest nod. She answered with one of her own. Denise Harper arrived 10 minutes later and took a seat in the front row. She was not there to save him. Eli understood that. Her job was to observe whether Lakefront's ethics process met the standards expected of a law school preparing students for the bar. Still, her presence mattered. A witness who knew procedure could hear the difference between discipline and theater. Marlow began the event with a speech about character. He spoke about trust. He spoke about merit. He spoke about students rising from unlikely circumstances through discipline and institutional support. Then his voice lowered. But access without integrity becomes entitlement. People shifted. Eli remained beside the honor board table, hands loose at his sides. This was the moment the story had been built for. Marlow called him forward, displayed the accusation, and let the audience understand that the scholarship student being honored would instead be judged. The pen appeared on the table. The blurry hallway image appeared on a screen. Less than 100 words into Marlow's explanation, everyone knew who was meant to be ashamed. Then Marlow made it worse. He did not simply accuse Eli of cheating. He turned Eli's mother into evidence. "We have heard," Marlow said, "that Mr. Mercer's late mother worked around court records. Perhaps that explains his familiarity with procedural language. But proximity to the justice system is not the same as respect for it." The sentence landed like a slap. Ruth's hand rose to her throat. Eli felt his vision sharpen around the edges. Marlow continued, voice smooth. Sometimes students from difficult backgrounds confuse opportunity with permission. They begin to believe that because life has been unfair, rules should bend in their favor. A few donors lowered their eyes. A few students kept filming. Preston Vale stood near the coffee table with his father, Grant Vale, a tall trustee in a charcoal suit. Preston's expression was not triumph exactly. It was relief. The relief of someone watching another person carry the weight meant for him. Professor Graham sat on the honor board panel with 2 faculty members and said nothing. Marlow gestured to the document in front of Eli. "Mr. Mercer has been offered a dignified path. Sign the voluntary withdrawal, admit misconduct, leave with the possibility someday of rebuilding trust." He paused. "Refuse, and Lakefront will proceed with expulsion, scholarship revocation, and referral of this matter to the Illinois Bar Character Committee." The word expulsion moved through the atrium with a physical force. Eli thought of rent, the medical bills, Ms. Navarro telling him she could not put him on legal accounts, his mother working double shifts while men in suits yelled over the record, the note on the old receipt. "If they ever come for the scholarship kids, start here." Marlow uncapped a pen and placed it beside the agreement. It was not Eli's pen. His mother's pen still lay in a plastic evidence sleeve, cracked barrel visible, tagged and sealed like a weapon. 5 minutes, Marlow said. Eli read the first page slowly, though he already knew what it said. Voluntary resignation, admission of academic misconduct, permanent waiver of claim. That last line had not been in the earlier draft. Permanent waiver of claim against Lakefront College of Law, its officers, trustees, employees, and affiliated donors. There it was. Not discipline. Protection. Eli's hand paused over the agreement. The crowd saw hesitation. Marlow saw surrender. Ruth saw something else. She saw Eli's thumb slide under the edge of his jacket, touching the sealed envelope once, then leaving it alone. He was checking that it was still there. He was choosing his moment. Marlow spoke again, softer now, for the room and the cameras. "Mr. Mercer, your mother may have served the courts, but you are not honoring her by dragging this school through baseless accusations. That nearly broke him. Not the cheating charge, not the whispers, that." For 1 second, Eli was back in the hospital parking lot, sitting in a borrowed car with the plastic bag on his lap, holding the pen because the rest of his mother was gone. He remembered promising nobody that he would finish. He remembered how alone a promise could feel when no one heard it. His fingers curled. The cheap event pen rolled toward his wrist. Professor Graham finally leaned toward the microphone. Dean Marlow. Perhaps we should recess and allow Mr. Mercer counsel. Marlow did not even glance at him. No. This institution has waited long enough. Denise Harper wrote that down. Grant Vale murmured something to Preston. Preston's mouth tightened. For the first time, the trustee seemed less certain about the stage Marlow had built. Then Marlow crossed the final line. He lifted the plastic sleeve containing Lenora's pen and held it up in front of the donors. This object has been sentimentalized, he said. But sentiment is often how guilt asks for sympathy. A pen does not make a person honest. Eli heard Ruth say, "Lord, no," under her breath. Marlow set the sleeve down hard enough for the tag to flutter. Eli stood. The movement was small, but it changed the posture of the atrium. Phones adjusted. A chair scraped. Harper's pen stopped. Marlow's eyes flashed with satisfaction. "Are you ready to sign?" Eli picked up the withdrawal agreement. For half a second it seemed he might. Then he folded it once down the middle, clean and precise, and placed it back on the table. "No." Marlow's face hardened. "Then the record will show that Elijah Mercer refuses accountability." Eli reached into his jacket. Marlow's hand tightened around the microphone. "If that is another excuse, save it for someone who bills by the hour." Eli removed the sealed envelope and set it beside the folded agreement. Certified court transcript enclosed. The same 4 words faced the room. Professor Graham's eyes widened. Grant Vale stopped whispering. Preston's face lost its practiced calm. Marlow stared at the courthouse tape. "What is this?" he asked. Eli did not answer him. "Harper," he said, his voice even. "Before this board votes on my expulsion, I request that the public record include certified testimony from Cook County Circuit Court." Marlow snapped, denied. Harper closed her notebook. "Dean Marlow," she said. "On what procedural ground?" The question traveled farther than a shout. Marlow's mouth opened, but no rule came out. And from the back of the atrium, Ruth Bell raised her hand. "I can answer one thing," she said. Every head shifted toward her. Eli knew then that truth had arrived, and it had not come in loudly. It had come with a witness who was tired of being invisible. Marlow found his voice before Ruth reached the front. "Ms. Bell is not a party to this proceeding," he said. "She has no standing." Ruth stopped beside the first row. Her work shoes squeaked softly on the polished floor. "I'm not trying to be a lawyer," she said. "I'm saying I cleaned that room." A few students lowered their phones, then raised them again. Marlow's smile returned in a thinner form. "Cleaning access does not explain why Mr. Mercer's pen was found beside stolen exam material." "No," Ruth said, "but it explains how someone could put it there without showing on that hallway camera." The atrium tightened. Ruth pointed toward the screen where the blurred, still image remained frozen. "That camera catches the student hallway door. It does not catch the service door from storage. Anyone with a master key can enter through the back and leave through the back. Faculty know it. Security knows it. Dean's suite knows it." Professor Graham stared at the image as if it had changed. Marlow gave a small laugh. "So now the defense is a conspiracy involving building doors?" Eli opened the sealed envelope. The sound of the courthouse tape tearing was quiet, but every microphone in the room seemed to catch it. Marlow's eyes dropped to the pages. "Mr. Mercer," he said, "you are not authorized to introduce unrelated material." Eli removed the certified transcript and laid it flat on the table. "It's not unrelated." Denise Harper stood. "Let him identify it." Marlow's head snapped toward her. "This is an internal proceeding, and you invited the State Bar to observe it," Harper said. "You also made it public. If you intend to vote after denying potentially relevant evidence, I will note that." That did not save Eli. It only opened the door. Eli had to walk through it himself. He read from the cover page, Cook County Circuit Court, Vale Family Education Trust versus Lakefront Access Fund. Hearing before Judge Samuel Alvarez. Certified transcript. Grant. Vale shifted in the front row. Preston whispered, "Dad?" Eli turned one page. 7 years ago, the Vale Trust sued Lakefront over the Access Fund. The dispute was about whether scholarship money could be redirected away from low-income students after the pledge had been announced. Marlow spread both hands. A settled civil dispute from before this young man enrolled has no bearing on his misconduct. Eli did not raise his voice. Page 47. He read the line slowly enough for the room to follow. Question. Dean Marlow, did you tell the trust that scholarship recipients could be removed for conduct reasons before funds vested? Answer. Only if the accusation is supported by documented proof, and only if the process is independent of donor influence. The words landed cleanly. Marlow's face did not change yet. That proves the opposite of what you imply, he said. It proves I insisted on integrity. Eli nodded once. That is the part you always quote. He turned to the next marked page. Page 52. Professor Graham leaned forward. Eli read again. Question. Who raised concern that top Access Fund recipients might embarrass the institution during public donor recognition? Answer. Mr. Vale raised that concern. Question. And what did you tell him? Answer. That Lakefront could manage reputational risk through conduct review if necessary. Grant Vale stood halfway. That was taken out of context. Harper's eyes moved to him. Please, sit down, Mr. Vale. He sat. Preston's face had gone blank, the kind of blank people use when thinking very quickly. Marlow pointed at Eli. This is desperate. It says nothing about an answer key, nothing about a pen, nothing about your cheating. No, Eli said. It explains why you needed me discredited before tonight. Marlow spoke over him. You earned the highest score after unauthorized material was copied. Your pen was found in the room. Your image appears on camera. Then produce the original camera file. Marlow stopped. Produce the access log. No answer. Produce the chain of custody for my mother's pen. The word mother changed something again. It pulled the object back out of evidence and into a life. Eli reached into the envelope and removed a folded paper, yellowed at the creases. This is the only supporting record I'm offering. Marlow's voice sharpened. What is that? A stamped transcript request, paid 7 years ago by Eli Mercer. He held it up, not high, just enough for the first row to see the court stamp. My mother ordered this transcript after that hearing, before she died. Same case, same docket, same courtroom. Harper stepped closer and inspected it without touching. The stamp appears original, she said. Date? Eli read it. Ruth pressed both hands together at her chest. Eli continued. She wrote one sentence on it. If they ever come for the scholarship kids, start here. The room understood before Marlow did. Not the whole legal history, not every donor clause or settlement term. They understood the human thing. Eli Mercer had seen a pattern years before her son became the target. She had paid for the record with money she probably needed for groceries. She had left her child a map, not to wealth, not to revenge, but to the first place powerful people had put their lie under oath. Marlow tried to seize control. This is sentimental manipulation, he said. A dead woman's note does not rebut possession of stolen material. Eli's hand rested beside the plastic sleeve holding the cracked pen. No, he said. But your process does. He faced the honor board panel. You refused my evidence request. You denied the original video. You denied the access records. You denied the chain of custody. You moved this review into a public donor event. Then you added a waiver releasing officers, trustees, employees, and affiliated donors from claims. Professor Graham's face strained. He picked up the withdrawal agreement and read the clause Eli had folded open. Marlow, Graham said, barely above a whisper, why is this in here? Marlow ignored him. This student is attempting to distract from his own misconduct. Then, let me ask one question, Eli said. The dean's nostrils flared. Eli pointed, not at Marlow, but at Preston. Who told you my time card could be entered by a manager? Preston swallowed. It was tiny, a throat movement, a flicker, but in a room full of cameras, tiny became visible. I don't know what you mean, Preston said. You said it in the dean's office before I told anyone I had a time card. Preston's father whispered, Do not answer. That whisper was loud enough for the front row. Harper wrote it down. Marlow slammed his palm on the table. This is over. The board will vote. No, Eli said. One syllable. Calm, final. The atrium stilled around it. Eli took the cracked pen from the evidence sleeve before Marlow could stop him. The plastic tag tore at the corner. A security guard moved, then hesitated when Harper raised her hand. Eli held the pen gently, not like proof, but like something returned from a fire. You used my mother's pen because you thought poverty makes people easy to stain, he said. You thought if the object looked personal enough, the lie would feel intimate enough for me to sign. Marlow's voice dropped. Put that down. Eli looked at the panel. I request a formal independent review, preservation of all video and access records, and suspension of any vote until outside counsel examines this process. Harper closed her notebook. As State Bar Liaison, I am advising that any vote taken now will be reported as procedurally compromised. The donor in the navy coat lowered his phone and spoke for the first time. My foundation will freeze its pledge pending that review. A murmur rose, not loud, but spreading fast. Grant Vail stood again. This is absurd. Harper turned to him. Mr. Vail, if your trust is connected to the waiver language, outside counsel will ask for that too. Preston stepped backward into the coffee table. Cups rattled. Marlow tried once more. Lakefront will not be governed by mob theater, Eli answered before anyone else could. Then, stop performing. It was the shortest line in the room, and the one everyone remembered. Marlow's mouth opened, but the authority had slipped. Not because he had confessed, not because justice had arrived fully formed. Because the public story he had built required Eli to be silent, and Eli had made the record speak. Professor Graham removed his glasses and set them on the table. I move to suspend the proceeding pending independent review. One faculty member seconded it. The other, after a painful pause, nodded. Marlow stared at them as if betrayal were something only he was allowed to feel. Harper addressed the room. This matter is not resolved today, but any academic action against Mr. Mercer is stayed pending review. Evidence must be preserved. Counsel should be notified immediately. It was not an arrest. It was not an instant firing. It created a record outside his control. By evening, Lakefront's general counsel had been replaced by outside counsel for the investigation. The donor pledge was frozen in writing before the week ended. Ruth's reassignment was put on hold. Eli's scholarship certification was marked pending, not revoked. And Dean Victor Marlow, who had spent years teaching donors that truth was whatever looked clean from a podium, was told to surrender his office access while the review began. As people emptied from the atrium, Eli stayed by the table. He capped his mother's pen. For the first time that day, his hand shook. Ruth came up beside him, close enough that only he could hear her. Lenora would have corrected every word he said. Eli folded the transcript back into its envelope. She did, he said. The next morning, Eli woke before the radiator. For a moment, he did not know why his body felt braced for impact. Then he saw the courthouse envelope on the kitchen table, his mother's pen beside it, and remembered that the worst thing had happened in public and somehow had not ended him. Lakefront did not apologize that day. Institutions rarely move at the speed of pain, but the hold on Eli's library job was lifted by noon. Miss Navarro called from the copy shop and told him the legal accounts were his again if he still wanted the hours. Ruth texted one sentence from an unfamiliar hospital break room. They sent me back to Lakefront Monday." Eli read it twice, then set the phone down and let himself breathe. Within a week, outside counsel interviewed students, faculty, maintenance staff, and security. The original hallway video showed only a person in a dark jacket near the student corridor. It did not show entry into the print room. The service door access records showed a dean's suite master key used after midnight the night before the answer key was found. That did not prove who carried the pen. It proved Marlow's certainty had been manufactured. Professor Graham admitted he had never personally handled the pen before it appeared in evidence. Preston Vale withdrew from classes before the end of the month, citing family reasons. His father resigned from the trustee board while the review continued. Dean Marlow was placed on administrative leave first, then he resigned. No dramatic confession, no handcuffs in the atrium, just a 2-paragraph statement about leadership transition, followed by a longer letter from the school announcing an independent audit of conduct procedures and donor influence. To the public, it sounded careful. To Eli, it sounded like a locked door opening an inch. The strongest consequence came quietly. Lakefront restored Eli's scholarship in writing, removed every misconduct reference from his record, paid for independent counsel to advise him through the review, and created a rule that no donor event could ever again be used as a disciplinary stage. Denise Harper sent Eli a formal copy of her report. At the bottom, beneath the procedural findings, she had written one sentence in plain language. Mr. Mercer did what the institution failed to do. He preserved the record. He carried that sentence in his backpack for months, not because it healed everything, because it named what had happened. Ruth returned to the atrium with her mop cart the following Monday. Students who had filmed her now held doors for her awkwardly, as if manners could erase silence. Ruth accepted the courtesy, but not the performance. When Eli apologized again, she cut him off. "You didn't put me in danger," she said. "They did." Then she pointed the mop handle at his chest. "And don't you dare waste that law degree being polite to people who hide behind paperwork." Eli smiled for real that time. By spring, a small plaque appeared outside the records clinic, a student-run program helping low-income Chicago residents request transcripts, expungement documents, housing records, and benefit files. It was funded by money redirected from the frozen donor pledge. The plaque did not mention Marlow. Eli had asked that it not. It read, "Lenora Mercer Records Clinic." The truth deserves a clean copy. On the day it was installed, Eli stood alone in the hallway before class. He ran one finger over his mother's name, then took out the cracked black fountain pen. He did not use it every day anymore. The barrel was too fragile, and the cap still failed to click. But he kept it for signatures that mattered. He signed the clinic's first volunteer form with it. The ink skipped on the L in his name, then steadied. For a long time, Eli had thought justice would feel like winning in front of the people who doubted him. But the older he got, the less he trusted applause. Applause had filled the same atrium where they tried to ruin him. Justice felt smaller than that. It felt like a corrected record. It felt like rent paid on time. It felt like Ruth clocking in without fear. It felt like a poor student walking through the front doors of a law school without lowering his eyes. Months later, Eli returned to the Cook County Courthouse for a summer internship. The first morning, he passed room 1402 and stopped outside the door. Inside, a court reporter adjusted her machine. Lawyers shuffled papers. A judge asked whether the parties were ready. Ordinary sounds. Sacred sounds if you had almost been erased by someone else's version of events. Eli sat on the back bench before his shift began and opened his notebook. At the top of the page, he wrote what his mother had taught him without ever making it a speech. People can lie loudly. The record waits. Then he capped the pen, placed it in his pocket, and walked toward the clerk's office. Not as a boy trying to prove he belonged, as a man who understood exactly why he did. And if you've ever seen someone powerful twist the truth and expect a quiet person to carry the blame, tell me in the comments. What should justice cost the people who build their reputation on someone else's silence? Subscribe for more stories about dignity, truth, and the moment the record finally speaks.